The Sloshing Machine is a middleweight slosher that is a staple of the Splatoon series, being in the series since the first game. It's gone through so many changes within SalmonRun alone, going from one of the worst to one of the best to now. Well, people don't give it the credit I think it deserves. So let me teach you a few ways to improve your skill set with it in SalmonRun. Stats. What's interesting about the Sloshing Machine is that it actually has the highest damage of any slosher if we only take into account single shots. It does 170 damage on directs. However, the Bloblobber and the Dreadringer both fire 2 or more shots and end up having higher damage than the machine if all shots hit. So when compared to these, the original Sloshing Machine feels weaker, but it isn't, as 170 damage per shot gives you quite consistent power on a strictly 1-to-1 basis. Its indirect hits are also quite strong, giving you a consistent way to deal at least 100 damage at all times. There is no fall off or decay with the Sloshing Machine, so any non-direct hit will always result in at least 100 damage. You can tell the difference between directs and indirects in two different ways. The sound they both make is different, and the way you aim with the hitbox. The top of the slosh is what hits for directs, and any other part of the slosh will hit for indirects. The entire slosh has multiple hitboxes which are larger than you may realise, and so this is how you'll always find yourself hitting indirects. The machine has quite good range and is something that I think is often forgot about when discussing this weapon. Combined with its reliable indirect damage and quite generous hitbox, the machine has the ability to aim very high and over obstacles such as barriers that could block damage, and it ends up dealing quite consistent damage. The range of the weapon also allows you to back away from fights but still be able to reach enemies and be constantly damaging them. All of this means that even if you miss the direct, you're still able to consistently damage enemies, and this is where the machine shines. But more on that later. Its painting ability is rather poor, being really able to only paint for itself and anything above it. You really don't want to waste time focusing on this, just ensure that you've always got ink to paint a path for yourself. In addition, its ink tank is rather solid, giving you around 18 sloshes on a full ink tank. After a bomb throw, you have about 5 sloshes left, which is enough to get you out of sticky situations, but not something you should be doing too much. After firing, it takes 42 frames to start recovering ink. The Sloshing Machine was famously very bad in SalmonRun in Splatoon 2, and whilst on release for Splatoon 3 it was great, it was then affected by the incident that the SalmonRun community refuses to get over. The time between consecutive sloshes was nerfed, from 33 frames to 38. What wasn't changed was the speed of the first shot. That is still 12 frames from humanoid form and 18 frames from swim form. Now I appreciate that in PvP this nerf was noticeable and does affect the way it is viewed and used. I'm not really sure why it was nerfed in SalmonRun. Famously, nerfs in PvP generally don't cross over to SalmonRun, but this is one of the very few instances that did. And I'll be honest with you, 99% of the people playing SalmonRun won't notice a difference or it won't affect their gameplay, especially in freelance. Sure, those 5 frames were nice, but do you really think that's the difference between you and a higher score? Maybe I'm being too harsh. 38 frames between consecutive swings puts the machine as slower than the Tri-Slosher, Slosher and Bloblobber, but faster than the Dreadringer and Explosher. I think balancing weapons is especially hard, and I'll admit that they may not have it 100% correct with the machine, but there isn't much you can do about it. So instead of lamenting your forlorn 5 frames, why not focus on what it's still very good at, such as boss slaying. Boss slaying. The Sloshing Machine has one of the fastest strafe speeds of any weapon in its class, so this means that whilst firing, you're able to move faster than other weapons. This allows you to work around enemies really quickly, and means you shouldn't find yourself in a position where you feel stuck if you don't overextend. steelheads are an easy one cycle with 2 direct hits. You really want to always hit them with directs, as you'll need 3 indirects and you may miss the cycle if you're not fast enough. Steel eels, scrappers and slamming lids all need 3 direct hits. The machine is extremely effective with these particular bosses, as its high arcing shots means that you can aim over the barriers that usually block damage, such as the steel eel's body, the scrapper's armoured outer shell, and the slamming lid's barrier. Drizzlers and big shots may feel slow to defeat with the machine, as they will take 6 directs and 8 directs respectively. So this being the case, you'll want to always make sure to shoot torpedoes back whenever you can, and to utilise indirects, bombs and other enemies' damage, such as steelhead explosions and slamming lids crush damage. I think that these are the only 2 bosses that the machine may struggle with, especially in large quantities, so it may be worth either utilising specials or being really strict with how long you leave them active for. Flipper floppers, moors and flyfish will require you to paint and throw bombs, things that whilst you can do, you may not want to overdo, due to the risk of running out of ink quite quickly. In freelance, you'll need to cover all bases, so ensure that you've always got good paint to either refill your ink tank or to make a swift escape. Stingers and fish sticks work well with the machine's ability to indirectly hit them, meaning you can hit multiple pots and multiple small fry with just one slosh. Given its range and ability to arc its shots, you'll find you can take care of both of these enemies rather quickly and from different angles. It's not the easiest weapon to hit multiple pots and stingers with, so bombs could be useful to speed up the process, but indirects work well as the pots individually have 60 HP. For lessers, you'll want to always group them up and aim slightly above their heads, as this ensures that the enemy at the front doesn't take all the damage. Aiming slightly higher than their heads means you'll hit multiple enemies at once, but I'll actually talk about that in a separate point. For night waves, you have the ink efficiency, range, damage and AoE to help out in many different ways. Your ranged arcing shots are excellent for filtering chum during rush, meaning you should always look to take aggressive positions up front to manage the amount coming towards the effective player. With grillers, it's important to aim your shots so that small fry are also hit with as many indirects as possible, whilst aiming for the direct 170 damage on the grillers themselves. For all the other night waves, you can flex well, switching between bomb throwing, egg running and boss slaying. For king waves, I often find myself looking to manage boss spawns rather than focusing on damaging the kings directly. DPS wise, the machine doesn't have the numbers to solely focus on the kings, so you'll be more effective at managing bosses and creating golden eggs to throw for damage. Hit the kings with the weapon whenever you can or whenever you have the downtime, but make sure you protect your teammates who may have higher DPS weapons that can damage the kings way more efficiently. Weapon roll. Even though the machine is a slosher, it actually fulfills very similar roles to blasters, specifically weaker damaging ones like the Clash and the Rapids. The reason I mention this is because those blasters are best used when taking into account their AoE and their ability to hit enemies from unconventional angles. You don't focus on the damage of their directs, you play around their indirects. The machine is exactly the same in this regard, being able to hit enemies over ledges, over other enemies, and arcing shots to indirectly hit multiple targets. So because of these properties, the machine is best used when taking a slayer role within a comp. Whether you're the main slayer or the supportive slayer is really up to the current comp you're in, but it's important to be focusing on damaging and defeating enemies with this weapon. Again, like blasters, the machine doesn't really do much else. It isn't really able to paint well, and the damage from bombs doesn't really match what the main weapon can do. Its range is great, being able to hit everything from comfortable distances, but it isn't a slow weapon or a weapon that requires you to hang back. The machine has a decent fire rate, being able to consistently work around enemy boss cycles such as steelheads and drizzlers. So to get the most out of this weapon, it's important to recognise that its strengths lie in fighting, not necessarily supporting. When using the machine, it's good to understand the limitations of it. Compared to other sloshers, it doesn't have huge AoE, and it doesn't have the damage ranges like some of the stronger ones either. All weapons are capable of fulfilling slayer roles, and there aren't any bosses that you can't defeat, but it's worth remembering what you're best at versus what your teammates might be better at. If you feel like there's too much going on, or you're not confident about being aggressive with this weapon, then supporting and teaming up with your teammates does work well with the the machine. In a pinch, the machine is a fine slayer, and I genuinely have a lot of fun with it when I find myself taking this role. Using different positions on a map, utilising space between yourself and enemies, and abusing its long-ranged, high-arcing shots means that there's always a way to damage enemies quicker than you may think. Combined with its indirects, I feel like it has an answer for every boss, with the only real downside being that your overall DPS is not as high as other weapons, meaning you may need to play a bit more cautiously and not just dive in without regard for your safety. In these instances, I tend to look at what part of the map I can use to remain safe. Are there ways I can hit enemies from beneath or above, or from weird angles? All sloshers benefit from this, but the machine especially so. Indirects. The Sloshing Machine is one of a few weapons in the game that benefit from not directly hitting a target all the time. Which sounds counterintuitive, I know, but a lot of things in this game are, and unfortunately the game itself doesn't explicitly tell you these things. But for the machine, you'll notice that you're more effective when aiming off-center, and given its massive hitbox, there's always a chance you'll hit something for 100 damage whenever you fire a shot. The best way to exploit this is against lessers. Any weapon that has the ability to hit multiple enemies at once is a weapon that can bypass choke points or time restrictions, and I think the machine doesn't get the credit it deserves for its ability to do this with its own AoE, but it isn't as easy to see when compared to literally every other slosher. The machine will feel lackluster when aiming directly at Cohawk, for example. One-on-one, each Cohawk will take 3 hits, which can become time consuming when there's like 5 of them. However, using your indirect means that you'll always be hitting and damaging Cohawks and lessers with every single shot. Over time, this means that you'll stack up more damage and speed up the process of managing lessers. For enemies that have 500 HP, such as Steel Eels and Scrappers, it's worth grouping these in with lessers to make sure you are hitting everything for indirects where possible. The ability to aim above barriers and obstacles means that you're always able to inflict some level of damage. 500 HP enemies require 3 direct hits from a machine, but you can ensure that you're also hitting the lessers around those bosses with those 100 damage indirects. Remember, aiming just above the heads of the lessers ensures that you damage things behind them as well. This, combined with the machine's large hitbox, its great range and amazing strafe speed, means that you can constantly apply pressure through indirect damage, softening up enemies for your teammates or just whilst you're bringing them in closer. Weapons like the machine are insanely productive because you can always spend time damaging enemies, even if it's indirectly. Not doing that means you're not utilising the weapon in the most efficient way possible, and that may be why you think it isn't very strong. Not all weapons benefit in the way the machine does, so trying to use it like other weapons will just yield disappointment. One of the biggest saving graces with this weapon is that you can miss your shot completely and still hit for 100 damage. What other weapons allow that? I've left a couple of links for Sloshing Machine guides in the description if you're interested in more technical advice. I hope this video helps you appreciate the Sloshing Machine as much as I do.